First question for you is three books you'd recommend to my audience and what, like young audience.
All right, I'm going to go with the Bible first. I really do
Uh,
believe that I'm a Christian, so let's
mm-hmm.
so I'm going to say the Bible. I really think the Bible's got enough wisdom in there. Honestly, you could live your life by it. A lot of modern psychology, I think,
Yeah,
really just actually is already in the Bible.
yeah,
And it's some things are simple, like God is love, which is really the most important thing in the world. But I think people don't understand. I think they've either think that the Bible says, oh, if you do this, your life is going to be perfect and good. And I
yeah,
think that's not
exactly.
what it is. I mean, the Bible says your life's going to be tough. Like
Yeah.
there's a book in the Bible called Job. Have you ever heard of Job?
No, I haven't.
So Job is actually somebody who followed God.
Mm-hmm.
And the devil came and said, well, God, the only reason Job follows you is because his life is so good. If his life was bad, he
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't follow you. And it's like, okay, well, he goes, if you want to do what you want with Job, this is God telling the devil, I believe he'll still follow me. And
Mm-hmm.
not to go crazy because this is, we have a limited amount of time, but if you read the book, despite all the bad things, Job still stays loyal to God. So there's a
That's
lesson in there
interesting.
that even if your life is bad, the Bible doesn't say that, but yet many people
Uh,
say it's that. It's also about love and relationships. And again, but I would recommend that.
yeah,
Second book I would recommend, and actually I got it. Do you want me to run and show you the cover?
yeah,
Take
yeah.
two.
We
It'll
can,
take two
we can.
seconds. Hang on. It's an influential book I have. And I say when I was in fourth grade, I read
Yeah,
this book, and even though it's a little kid's book,
yeah,
I don't know if you can see that.
yeah. They can.
It's called Meet Martin Luther King Jr. And I don't
Yeah.
know why, but I read it. It was I remember I still can remember. It was sitting there, and I said, "Oh, let me read that book."
Mm-hmm.
And what impressed me was how Martin Luther King said, "No violence. We're going to do this the right way," and all this. And I said to myself, and he was a Christian too.
Oh,
So
I
that
didn't know
made
that.
yeah, he
Yeah.
was a preacher.
Uh,
And so I was drawn to that because of similar beliefs, Christianity. And I said, I like that. He's a peaceful person, but he's also strong. There's
mm-hmm.
being peaceful and you roll over and let people take advantage, but there's
Yeah.
also being peaceful and saying, no, we're going to
Mm-hmm.
still fight, but we're going to do it in a peaceful way. And I would say that's the second most influential book. In fact, that's when probably about 3 or 4 years ago when we were having the problems with the race relations. I remember this book, and I actually found it on the internet. And I said, I want to get it because I
Mm-hmm.
would say behind the Bible, that's the second most profound book I ever read. I really feel that had a lot to do with who I am. I said, I want to be a
That's
peaceful
amazing. I ain't
person.
gonna lie.
Third book, hmm, that's a tough one. I'm not sure what I would say on that one. Give me a second, and maybe if it pops into my
Yeah.
head later on, I'll hit that one.
All
But
right,
I
now.
always tell people the two most influential
Yeah.
books are the Bible and that book.
All right. So, like, oh, you said about the Martin Luther King thing, about the peaceful and stuff. Do you feel like everything should be peaceful? Like, that's just
It's a tough one because I know Martin Luther King and Malcolm X were both about the same time, and
mm-hmm.
while they were striving for the same thing, and I don't pretend to be any kind of historian, so I won't,
Yeah. Exactly.
so I'm not going to pretend I know everything about this, but I knew they felt that they differed in the way they should do it. I think Malcolm X felt, again, I may be wrong on this, but this is my impression, that he felt like, you know what, the peaceful resistance can only go so far. Sometimes it hits a point, and I think they were both well-intentioned men with the same goal, but they said so. And you know what? Unfortunately, the question you're asking, do you always have to be peaceful? I think it's always the way to go. But obviously, you
Mm-hmm.
have people like Hitler. If you just were completely peaceful,
Yeah.
nothing would have
Yeah.
happened.
That's where I get into the situation where
You
it's like
do hit
I'm not
point.
all the way peaceful. Like someone broke into my family's home,
Oh yeah,
I was about to
oh yeah.
defend and stuff.
Defense, yeah, absolutely. And actually, it's funny. What I like is I always remember this in history. I believe you're right. There is a time for force. I mean,
Yeah. Exactly.
Hitler required force. There was no
Exactly.
way about it. You can try economic sanctions and things first to try to basically, starve a country off because they need your resources, but there's a time at which, unfortunately, force is. In fact, actually, in church, at the time of 9/11, the priest actually brought up there's actually, and I don't know if this was countries that agreed to this or who did, there's actually this kind of step-by-step thing that you follow that says they're basically questions, and if you say yes to this, yes to this, yes, then it's okay to use force. It's kind of like, don't use force unless you go through this process that says, are people, and again, I'm just going to paraphrase, I'm not sure these are exact, but are people at risk? Have you already tried other things that haven't worked? And then if eventually you hit the point says, okay, at this point, force is justified.
Yeah, I like that a lot, man.
I do like that. And I honestly wish I knew where he got it. But it was basically the criteria for a justifiable war. So again, long-winded, but to go back, there is a time. There is a time, unfortunately, for force. And absolutely, defense, you should, I believe you should defend yourself. But what's actually interesting, and I remember learning this in school, we have a Department of Defense in our country. It used to be called the Department of War. But somebody thought, you know what, let's change it because that's too aggressive.
Yeah, that does sound aggressive.
It's too aggressive. Let's call it the Department of Defense. And I thought that was actually a pretty wise decision because it's like, all right, we're not looking for war, but we're also going to defend ourselves.
Yeah, but if you have to, it's like...
Yes. So I always thought that was an interesting thing that was originally called the Department of War. So.
I've been learning a lot about wars, I'm not going to lie. Like watching YouTube videos, I've been in the history books. It's actually crazy that we, as humans, we can do so much things. We drive cars, we're so civilized. I mean, we go to outer space.
Oh, yeah.
We're trying to go to Mars, but yeah, it's like we're stuck in this primitive state where we just war.
Well,
like,
you know what?
It's
and
weird.
I would say that at the end of the day, that's where biblical teachings of love and, again, it's maybe sounds oversimplified to people say, yeah, that's great in theory.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's people being selfish that causes problems, especially in our, like you say, in our society. Hey, let's be honest. Back in the caveman day when they didn't have technology, they may have had to fought each other because, hey, there's only one deer here, and if you eat it, I'm dying. We don't live like that.
Yeah,
there's enough food. We have enough technology that we all should be able to live. So at the end of the day, why isn't that true? It's probably because of selfishness. Yeah, it's like I've got my stuff and I don't want to share it. I mean, that sounds silly, but at the end of the day, that's with all the riches we have in this world, technology, nobody should really go hungry, unless they're just like refuse. But sometimes I think, if you refuse to work, I don't think you should starve. But maybe you shouldn't have the best life. But no,
exactly.
I agree. I think, with like you said, going outer space, technology, I mean, the internet. I mean, we're doing a podcast here, and theoretically...
We got like a little computer just in the
theoretically, by that thing, somebody could be watching it all the way around the world.
Yeah,
I mean, when I was in college...
Even telephones, like calling people.
When I was in college, I was a computer science major, so 1986-ish.
Yeah.
The computers back then, people would laugh at. Internet... If it existed, nobody knew about it.
Yeah.
Wireless didn't exist. Cell phones, or again, if they did, nobody knew. Like, it was in the early stages. Even then, my professor, who had been an electrical engineer back in the 50s, he says, if you had told me what computers can do today, which we would laugh at, he said, I would have thought you were crazy. Absolutely, his mind would be blown. To think that we're recording this off a little device,
and put it out to.
And this guy's an expert in the field, so he, if anyone, should have been able to predict how fast technology, and even he was off. It is going so fast. We have these incredible abilities to do things, and yet some of the basic things of getting along we don't do. So why is that disconnect? And I would say it's because we're selfish. And everyone is. All people are. Just it's to the degree, but
yeah, I like that. Another question is most important lesson that you learned throughout your whole career, because a lot of young people watch me. They need
like my professional work career.
Yeah, like the most important.
I would say someone said this, and I agree with them. Show up to work on time, and actually show up a little early.
Yeah, I heard
You're going to be ahead of half the people.
Mm-hmm.
He says, show up on time, do whatever your boss tells you. You'll be ahead
Mm-hmm.
of like 75% of the people. He says, show up on time. Actually have a plan for like, just not show up to work and like, hey boss, what do you want me to do? That's really
Going through the
good.
motions.
But say, which again, if you do that and you actually do that, and you'll still be ahead of most people. But if you kind of have a plan, like, hey boss, I was noticing that if we did this, maybe we would be better. So like you show that you're thinking about your job, you'll be
Yeah.
ahead of 90%. And he says, then have
Yeah.
like the courage to actually try to do some stuff like that.
Yep.
You got it made. Because honestly, think about it. If you had a company, you want people to do what you tell them, not because you're like, I'm the
Yeah.
big boss, because like, well, no, this is my company.
Yeah. You
I
want
know
things done
what's
to
doing.
how. Yeah.
I actually want it done because this is my company.
You want things done to
Be
your
the
liking.
guy that if you had a company, you would hire. That's another way of thinking about it. Say,
I never heard that. I never heard that before.
yeah,
I like
think
that.
about it. If this was my company, I would hire me in a second. Or another
Yeah.
thing I heard someone say is, say to yourself, let's say you have 10 people at your company.
Mm-hmm.
Say to yourself, let's say we have to go down to 4 people or 5 people.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know that my boss wouldn't even think twice that I'm one of those 5 people. And that's not saying you're trying to beat the other people, but you're doing your job so well that if he said, hey, you know what, we got to get rid of 5 people.
Mm-hmm.
Should we get rid of Trey? The boss would say, are you crazy?
Yeah, I'd
Trey
hope not.
is great.
I'd hope
no
not.
way. You want him to say Trey or Pete? No way. You're ridiculous for asking that. Of course, we're going to keep him. You want him that you want to think that would be your boss's answer. I think if you think like that, you'll be good.
Yeah.
And go into work excited. I mean, you know what? It's at the very least, if you can't motivate yourself to work, say to yourself, I got to eat.
Yeah.
I don't want to starve.
That's my one thing that motivates me to get more money, because I'll be hungry. I'll be like, I want Chipotle.
You can't kid yourself. It's like you say to yourself, I do have to eat. If that's right, but in time, start going to be someone there. You know what? I want to do a good employee. I want to be proud for myself. I don't care what anyone else thinks. I want to say I did a good job.
Mm-hmm.
You mind if I keep going on this?
Well, I'm actually going to ask you another question.
Yep, you stop me because I'll keep going.
That's fun. That's fun. Especially when we have more time, like another time.
You jump in and say, Pete, okay, great. Let's go next question. I won't be offended.
All right, I got you. Next question is, what do you think is wrong with the new generation and how can it be fixed?
Okay. I will say, I'm at an age where I go, kids today. And I realize every generation does it. I'm sure my dad said this, but I would say I fear that today's generation, and this has been a trend, not going to church as much. And again, that's what
religion does need to be taught more in today's nowadays. Because even if you don't believe in nothing, like no matter what, religion is a good standpoint on the world. It makes the world better. It makes people better. So you can't. Either way, religion is good for the world.
I agree. I think, I personally believe that. I also believe that maybe I'm wrong on this. So I'm willing to be corrected, but I want to tell you my opinion. And I can't pretend it's based on fact and I've done research, but I feel like some of the basic skills are like mathematics. I just feel like I kind of watched my kids and I was like, man, not stressing, like being able to say, you should be able to go 8 times 7 is 56.
Yeah, thanks. I'm really
without even, and I think that's important because it builds on certain things. I do understand like things like spelling are kind of going out the window with spell checks. So I'll examine. So I would say basic education, and I would say a work ethic. And again, this is like just get inside of my head.
Big one.
Like I do feel in some way, maybe one of the bad things about COVID and the stimulus money. I'm not saying they needed to do it because people couldn't work, and it's not fair to say, well, you can't work because of COVID. I believe in giving them money, but it may have caused some people to be like, I don't know. So in summary, religion needs a stronger education system and a better work ethic. It's not going to do. Think about it. Why are those bad things? How are those? So if you invest in those, it's going to pay off in your life, I think. So I'm not saying like condemning people. I'm saying this is a suggestion. I'm not saying like you're no. Work on religion. At least, like you said, you're open minded. You
Yeah,
know
I'm still trying to figure out what I
exactly.
believe in. I'm studying all religions. Like I go to a group and stuff too. Like, and I'll be
Good,
having debates with them and stuff. I'm actually gonna do a podcast with them here soon.
cool.
Yeah,
And what's
you
wrong with
you'd like
edu?
that one.
I think I would because I went through a phase where I was kind of learning about stuff. So, but
They're
that's
big
it.
time Christians. Like read the Bible front to back.
Yes,
Like they're church leaders. So I'm gonna do a
I'll
podcast
throw
with them.
one guy out that people maybe listen to because he's old school, but I think he's a great preacher. Billy Graham. Google Billy Graham sermons. So that's my little pitch.
I
Just
don't think
check it
I
out.
know him.
Check it out. Billy Graham sermons. I think if you
Hmm.
watch 2 or 3, you might be like, he's a little dated, but he's got some good messages.
Yeah.
All right. I know we're kind of running out of time. You want to
So
throw another question?
yeah. So what would you say your biggest failure was? Not so much as a regret, but your biggest failure. It's all right to realize it was a failure, then say,
Okay,
all right,
no,
I'm gonna do this to get
I
better.
think that's a great
Because a lot
question.
of young men watch me, so I want them to like not make the same mistakes that maybe other people have made. And
Yeah,
you got a lot of life
absolutely.
experience.
And I do think, you know what, we all make mistakes. Um, I think at times, in an effort to, I'm a peaceful person and I like people to agree. I think there are times where I should have been a little more like, hey, we can get along, but I do disagree with you. I think I'm not.
Agree to disagree.
Yes, I think I sometimes wasn't. I don't want to use the word vocal, but maybe didn't express enough. I disagree with that. I'm a little uncomfortable. And we live in a society, unfortunately, like you disagree with me, you hate me. I don't think we need to be like that.
I mean, I would say
I
on my
think
part too, I do kind of get mad. Like not like kind of mad, but I'm like a competitive debater. You get what I'm saying? Like I
yeah,
like to debate. I like to get my point across. So sometimes I will get kind of angry when I'm debating about something,
yeah.
especially if I feel like I know I'm right.
Or
Like
if it's
I really
if it
feel like I'm
means a
right.
lot to you too.
Yeah, exactly.
That's okay. I think I need to be like, I would never say I agree with someone when I
Hmm.
don't. But maybe I should be a little more, I would say, be a little more comfortable saying, hey, you know what? I respect your opinion. Because you always should say that. I respect your opinion,
Yeah,
respect your feelings. I just disagree. And I
absolutely.
think we would all get along better if we could say, you know what? I can get along with people who have a different opinion than me. So
Yeah,
be
exactly.
comfortable saying what you feel, but it doesn't mean you
Yeah,
got to be mad and like make people
yeah,
feel bad about it. That would be a lesson I'd say I could have done a better job at.
yeah.
So,
I really liked having you on.
all right.
I know it wasn't as long as
No,
the people
no,
may
I
wonder.
like it. Seriously.
They probably liked you on here, like talking about all that stuff.
No, I'm
But
impressed. Seriously, I am impressed, Trey. You're
yeah,
a thoughtful person, and
yeah,
I think this is cool. I actually,
yeah,
seriously, thanks. I hope we do more of them.
yeah. Me too.